going to create an audio podcast episode today. Welcome to NASA's DIY podcast tutorial. I'm Denise Miller. In our previous sessions, we've defined podcast, given you a tour of the DIY podcast site, shown you how to subscribe to our blog, and demonstrated how to download audio and video clips. Today, we're ready to put it together to create an audio project. Remember, our goal is for you to learn how to use the DIY podcast site so you can teach your students. When they create their project, it will not be just to satisfy the teacher for a grade, but they will create an awesome project that they will be able to share with the world. I'm going to demonstrate how to use the DIY podcast site. We're going to focus on the process and not on how to use specific software. Search the internet to find an audio editor for recording and mixing audio. Many editors are free or inexpensive. Let's talk about what you'll need to create an audio file. You'll need a script, audio editing software, a microphone, downloaded NASA audio tracks, and optional opening and closing music. Here's a hint about using music. Be sure the music is pod safe. Being pod safe means that the music is legal to use in your podcast. NASA's audio clips are copyright and royalty free, so you have permission to use them in your production. Let's get back on track and begin at the DIY podcast homepage. Here, we've summarized the steps of podcast creation for you. First, we'll download the clips from the NASA site. Then we'll write our script, record our own narration, edit, and share, just as it says on the page. Let's do it. You'll want to plan the types of products you expect from your students. You'll probably want to create a rubric so students will know your expectations. We have a blog post about rubrics that you may find helpful. Now that you've done your planning, the students can do theirs. A good production requires planning. This is called the pre-production phase. It's important that students understand that they don't just sit down at the mic and begin recording. We'll go to the Rocket Science page. This page is not only our starting point for downloading audio and video resources, but it also has an overview of the topic. Before we write our script, we read the overview. This is part of our research and planning. We've read about rockets, and now we can decide which area to focus on in this episode. We'll make our episode about Newton's first law of motion as it applies to rockets. Our podcast will be called Science in the Middle. Since we're using the Rocket Science DIY podcast module, the title of this episode will be Think Like a Rocket Scientist, Part 1. Let's click on audio clips. If we scroll down, we'll see that our expert discusses Newton's laws in clips 9A through 12A. We can listen to what she says by clicking Listen on each one. For some readers, it is faster to read the text version than to listen. We'll click Text Version under clip 9A. Yes, we'll want to use this clip, but our expert talks about all three laws. So we'll download this clip and then edit it to use just the first two sentences. We'll also use clip 10A. Okay, we've decided which ones we want to use, so we'll click the back button, and we'll right-click Listen on 9A to download it. I suggest that you delete the leading numbers so that you will only have the file number and name. I already have a folder on my desktop for all of my podcast files, and we'll click Save. Then I'll download clip 10A. Now we have the NASA files downloaded. To simplify time in the computer lab, have a folder with all the audio files downloaded on the computer for your students. We'll write our part of the script and fit the NASA clips in with ours. We've written a script and made our part help explain what the NASA expert says. We've copied and pasted the expert's words into the script. If this is an interdisciplinary project, Let the English or language arts teacher work with students on their scripts and their oral communication skills. The science teacher can work with students on the accuracy of their scripts. Students can build their podcast file with help from the computer teacher. Now our student is ready to record her part of the script with the audio editor. By this point, our student has had a lot of contact with the subject of Newton's laws. She's read the overview, researched her topic, and written the script. Then she's practiced the script several times for the recording. The repeated contact with Newton's laws through reading, writing, and speaking has helped her understand the subject. Our files are ready to mix with NASA's. The audio editor is open. Let's give our production a name and save often. We'll save it as Rocket Scientist 1. Each of the audio files is called a track. We'll lay our tracks on the timeline. Depending on your editor, you'll either drag and drop your tracks or import them into the timeline. Our intro track is simintro.wave for Science in the Middle intro. We can use this track at the beginning of each episode as our theme music. We'll lay the remaining tracks in order, so the next track is Rocket Sci 1A. NASA Track 9A is next. And we're going to trim it according to the script. For this one, we want to end after she says, unless acted on by an outside force.
Isaac Newton came up with 3 laws of motion. The first one is an object will remain at rest unless acted on by an outside force.
Your audio editor has a selection tool to highlight the part of the track that you don't want so you can delete it. Or your audio editor may have a trim tool that you can use to edit the track to where you want it to end. Let's save our production. Now we'll import track Rocket Sci 1B and the NASA Track 10A. We want to trim off the first few words of track 10A so that it begins with an object such as a rocket.
With the first one, an object such as a rocket.
Finally, we'll add our 3 remaining tracks and our outro. Now we have all of our audio tracks imported. We'll line the tracks up on the timeline, making sure that they play in the order we want. The best way to know if everything is aligned the way you want it is to listen to your project.
Welcome to Science in the Middle. Science for middle school students who want to know it all.
Today's episode of Science in the Middle is Think Like a Rocket Scientist, Part 1. Hi, I'm Elena.
Thanks for listening to Science in the Middle.
It sounds good. Now we just have to export the file to a format that computers and portable devices can read. So we'll export the file as an MP3 and save it. Give yourself a hand. You just created an audio file that you can share. It's ready to add to your school website, to email, burn to a CD, or drop on your MP3 player, smartphone, or other media player. It's not a podcast yet. Talk to your school's or district's technology coordinator about a podcast hosting service or creating a news feed that will automatically send the new episodes to subscribers. If you're not ready to make a podcast, it's okay. You have a product that you and your students can use. We certainly couldn't end our time together without an assignment. Your assignment is to keep practicing. Learn some of the basic tools on your audio editor. Then show students. Don't worry, your students will help you with the audio creations. We made a basic episode. When your students begin creating their own audio files, They will probably want to add music, sound effects, and more voices for a flashier production. Let your students be heard. Take a break now and prepare to make a video episode in our next session. This is Denise Miller. Thanks for joining us on NASA's DIY Podcast Tutorial.